The stars reflected off the hulls of thousands of ships as they floated in victory formation. The battle was over. The Krell were retreating. Admiral Thexal stood on the bridge of his flagship, all four arms crossed over his chest in the traditional Vordani gesture of satisfaction. Around him, his crew celebrated with careful dignity, as was proper for warriors who had just won the greatest battle of their lives. The Krell swarm had terrorized the galaxy for 2 years. 12 entire star systems had been consumed by their endless hunger. Billions of lives lost, hundreds of worlds stripped bare of all organic matter. The insectoid nightmares had seemed unstoppable, their hive ships breeding faster than the Andromeda Council could destroy them. But today, finally, the tide had turned. All fleet commanders report ready status, announced Captain Yanara from her station. The Cecil officer's crystalline body pulsed with soft blue light as she processed incoming messages from the 7 species that made up the Council fleet. Casualties are heavy, but morale is high. The Krell are in full retreat. Thexal allowed himself a small smile. His reptilian features were not designed for emotional display, but his crew knew him well enough to recognize satisfaction. How many did we lose? 247 ships destroyed, another 300 damaged beyond immediate combat capability. Yanara's voice carried the weight of those numbers. Each ship represented hundreds or thousands of lives. But the Krell lost over 1,000 hive ships. Their breeding stations are in ruins. This was the victory we needed. Commander Breck, the massive bear-like Turian who served as weapons coordinator, slammed one heavy paw on his console in triumph. We should pursue them. Drive them back to whatever dark corner of space they crawled from and finish this. Agreed, Thexal said. He turned to address the entire bridge crew. Today we proved that unity is stronger than hunger. 7 species who once were enemies now fight as brothers and sisters. The Krell thought they could devour us one world at a time. They were wrong. Send a message to all Council ships. We regroup for 6 hours, repair what we can, and then we hunt. Cheers erupted across the bridge. On the view screen, Thexal could see the other Council ships. The elegant curved designs of the Cecil energy cruisers. The brutal armored blocks of Turian battleships. The sleek Vordani destroyers. Ships from species that had fought each other for centuries now flying side by side. If nothing else came from this war, at least they had learned to work together. Admiral, one of the junior officers called out, "We're detecting spatial distortions. Multiple signatures approaching fast from the edge of the nebula." Thexal's moment of satisfaction vanished. Krell reinforcements? Unknown, sir. The signatures are wrong. These aren't matching any Krell patterns in our database. Yanara moved to the sensor station, her crystalline form shifting through the console as she directly interfaced with the ship's systems. Running analysis now. Whatever they are, they're big, very big, and there are a lot of them. Battle stations, Thexal ordered. The celebration died instantly as his crew returned to their posts. Bring all weapons online. Signal the fleet. We're not done yet. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of instruments and the hum of charging weapons. Thexal watched the view screen as the spatial distortions grew stronger. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear. This was different from Krell arrivals. The insectoids emerged from hyperspace in chaotic bursts, their ships tumbling out in swarms. These distortions were controlled, precise, mathematical. Getting clearer readings now, Yanara reported. Her voice had changed. There was something in it that Thexal had never heard before. Uncertainty, fear. Admiral, these aren't Krell ships. Then what are they? I don't know. The energy signatures are completely foreign. Wait, I'm detecting metal. Refined alloys. Nuclear reactors. Chemical propulsion systems alongside what appears to be matter-antimatter drives. This technology it's primitive and advanced at the same time. Breck growled low in his throat. That makes no sense. I'm just telling you what the sensors say. Yanara snapped back. The first ship emerged from the distortion. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Thexal's flagship. The design was brutal and industrial, all sharp angles and heavy armor plating. It looked like something designed not by artists or engineers, but by soldiers who expected to get hit and wanted to make sure they could hit back harder. Weapons bristled from every surface. The hull was painted dark gray, and along its side were symbols in a language none of them recognized. Scanning their database now, Yanara said. They're broadcasting an identification signal. The ship is called Indomitable. Then the second ship appeared, and the third, and the fourth. They kept coming, dropping out of the distortion one after another in perfect formation. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, strange small craft that could only be fighters, though no one had used manned fighters in serious warfare for centuries. The technology was too dangerous, the pilots too fragile. Count now at 100 ships, Yanara reported. Her voice was steady, but Thexal could see her light flickering with stress. 150. 200. How many are there? Thexal demanded, still counting. 250. 300. Admiral, they've stopped. 301 ships total, including the flagship. The bridge was absolutely silent. 300 unknown ships appearing from nowhere, armed and clearly military in nature. The Council fleet had just finished the hardest battle in their history. They were damaged, tired, low on ammunition and power. And now this, are they targeting us? Thexal asked quietly. No, sir. They're just holding position. Waiting. Try to hail them. All frequencies. If they're hostile, I want to know now. If they're potential allies, even better. We could use the help. Yanara worked her console for a long moment. I'm getting something. They're responding. Patching it through now. The view screen changed. Instead of the fleet of unknown ships, it now showed the bridge of the lead vessel. And standing in the center of that bridge was a creature that made Thexal's blood run cold for reasons he couldn't quite explain. It was bipedal, like a Vordani, but with only 2 arms. Its skin was a strange pale shade, its face flat with small eyes that seemed to look right through the screen and into Thexal's soul. It wore a dark uniform with symbols and decorations that clearly indicated military rank. Its hair was gray, cut short, and its expression was completely unreadable. I am Fleet Admiral Chenwei of the United Nations Space Command, the creature said in perfect galactic standard. Earth sends its regards. We've been watching your war with the Krell for some time now. We've decided to intervene. Thexal felt all 4 of his hearts skip a beat. Humans. These were humans. But that was impossible. Humans had been quarantined 60 years ago, locked in their own star system by Council decree. Their ships destroyed if they dared to leave. They were primitives, unworthy of the galactic community. They couldn't possibly have built a fleet like this, how? Thexal started to say. But before he could finish his question, every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. The Krell were back. And they weren't retreating anymore. Admiral Thexal knew this face. He had seen it 60 years ago when he was just a young captain, when he had been part of the first Council contact mission to human space. The memory came flooding back as he stared at Fleet Admiral Chenwei on the view screen. The memories were not pleasant. 60 years ago, everything had been different. The Vordani and the Cecil had been at war for 3 centuries. It was an old conflict, started over mining rights to a mineral-rich asteroid belt that neither side even remembered the location of anymore. But the war continued because that was what they did. That was what they had always done. Then the human exploration ship had stumbled into Vordani space. They called it the Pioneer, and it had been small, unarmed, and completely helpless. But the humans aboard had not acted helpless. They had sent greetings in a dozen languages they had somehow learned by intercepting Council communications. They had offered friendship, trade, and cultural exchange. They had seemed excited to meet other intelligent life. Thexal had been part of the delegation sent to meet them. He remembered the humans as strange but earnest. They smiled constantly, which his people found unsettling. They asked endless questions. They seemed genuinely interested in everything about Vordani culture, from their food to their poetry to their military strategies. The Vordani leadership had seen an opportunity. If these humans were advanced enough to cross interstellar space, perhaps they could be convinced to join the war against the Cecil. The humans had politely refused. They said they did not take sides in conflicts they did not understand. Instead, they offered to mediate peace talks between the Vordani and Cecil. This offer had been taken to the full Andromeda Council. All 7 species met to discuss the humans, and the Council had been insulted. These newcomers, these primitives who had barely left their own star, dared to suggest they could solve problems the Council could not. These humans who used chemical rockets and fission power, while the Council had mastered antimatter and hyperspace. They dared to lecture the Council about peace. The Council had voted unanimously. Humanity was too dangerous in their ignorance, too arrogant in their weakness. They would be placed under protective custody for their own good. A quarantine zone was established around their star system. Any human ship that attempted to leave would be destroyed. Any council ship that tried to contact them would be punished. Humanity would be allowed to develop in isolation until they were wise enough to accept their place in the galactic order. Thexol had voted for the quarantine. At the time, it had seemed reasonable, even merciful. The humans were children playing with fire. Better to contain them before they hurt themselves or others. Now, 60 years later, those children were back, and they had brought 300 warships with them. "You recognize us," Admiral Chen said. It was not a question. "I can see it in your face, Admiral Thexol. Yes, we know who you are. We know all of you. We've been watching for 60 years. "That's impossible," Yanara said from her station. The quarantine was absolute. We had sensor stations, patrol ships, automated defense platforms. Nothing could have gotten past them. Chen smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "You had all of that, yes. Very impressive. For about 20 years it actually worked. Then we figured out how to hide our ships from your sensors. Then we figured out how to slip past your patrol routes. Then we disabled your defense platforms one by one and replaced them with our own. For the last 40 years, Admiral Thexol, your quarantine has been imaginary. We let you think it was working because it suited our purposes." Thexol felt sick. "What purposes?" "To develop in peace," Chen replied. "To build our strength without interference. To watch you and learn everything about you while you learned nothing about us. You wanted to keep us in a cage, Admiral. Instead, you gave us the perfect laboratory to study you," Commander Breck snarled. "You speak of deception like it's something to be proud of." "We speak of survival," Chen said. "You made us your prisoners. We adapted. That's what humans do." "Then why reveal yourselves now?" Thexol asked. "Why come here?" "Because of them," Chen gestured off-screen. "The Krell. We've been monitoring your war. We watched you struggle and bleed and barely hold the line. We calculated that you would win this particular battle, but lose the overall war within another 6 months. The Krell breed too fast. You're fighting a losing battle, Admiral." "Then you're here to help us?" Yanara asked. There was hope in her voice, but also suspicion. "We're here to end the war," Chen corrected. "But first, we're going to have a conversation about the quarantine. About our terms for joining this fight." "You dare to negotiate while the Krell threaten us all?" Breck roared. "We dare to negotiate precisely because the Krell threaten you all," Chen replied calmly. "You need us, Commander." "We don't need you. We could retreat back to Sol right now and let you handle this yourselves. The Krell have no interest in human space. We're not on their menu. So yes, we're going to negotiate and you're going to listen because we're the only chance you have." Thexol wanted to argue, wanted to tell this human that the Council did not bow to threats. But the sensors were showing Krell ships reversing course. The enemy had detected the human fleet and was coming back, perhaps sensing opportunity in the chaos. And Thexol knew Chen was right. The Council was exhausted. This new fleet, human or not, might be the difference between survival and extinction. "What do you want?" Thexol asked quietly. "The quarantine ends, immediately and permanently. Humanity joins the Andromeda Council as equals, not as probationary members or junior partners. Full voting rights, full access to all Council space, and a public apology from the Council for the illegal imprisonment of our species." "That's impossible," Yanara said. "The Council would never agree." "Then the Council can fight the Krell alone," Chen replied. "We'll watch. We're good at watching by now." The bridge fell silent. Thexol looked at the human fleet on his sensors. 300 ships. He did not know their capabilities, but the technology he could see was frighteningly advanced. The humans had not wasted their 60 years of isolation. "I don't have the authority to agree to your terms," Thexol said finally. "I know," Chen replied, "but you have the authority to recommend them. And I think you will, Admiral, because you remember our first meeting. You remember that we offered peace and you offered prison, and now you're wondering what kind of species we became during those 60 years locked away." Before Thexol could respond, the Krell arrived, the view screen filled with the horrible organic forms of hive ships. Hundreds of them. More than had been in the original battle. Far more. They had called for reinforcements. "All ships, battle stations," Thexol ordered. "Prepare for engagement." The human ships did not move. They just floated there, weapons powered but not targeting anything. "Waiting, what are you doing?" Thexol demanded. "Fight or flee, but decide now." Admiral Chen looked at something off-screen, then back at Thexol. "We're waiting for your decision, Admiral. Agree to our terms and we'll fight beside you. Refuse and we'll leave you to your fate. You have 30 seconds. Thexal looked at Yanara, at Breck, at his crew. He saw fear in their faces. Fear of the Krell. Fear of losing everything they had fought for. And he saw something else, shame, because Chen was right. They had imprisoned the humans out of pride and fear. And now those same humans held all the power. I will recommend your terms to the council, Thexal said. Chen nodded. Good enough. All ships engage the enemy. Show them what 60 years of human innovation looks like. The human fleet sprang to life. The first thing Admiral Thexal noticed was the speed. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen before. They did not glide gracefully through space like Cecil cruisers or lumber forward like Turian battleships. They moved with violent, aggressive acceleration that seemed to ignore the normal laws of physics. One moment they were stationary. The next they were already among the Krell hive ships, weapons blazing. What kind of drives are those? Inara asked, her voice filled with shock. Those acceleration rates should crush any organic crew. Maybe they're using AI, suggested one of the junior officers. Unmanned ships controlled by computers? The answer came seconds later as human fighter craft began pouring from the larger ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They swarmed around the Krell like angry insects, too small and fast for the larger weapons to track. And through the communication channels, Thexal could hear human voices. Pilots, living beings inside those tiny ships, laughing and shouting as they dodged Krell fire. They're insane, Breck whispered. Those pilots should be dead from the G-forces, but they were not dead. They were very much alive and tearing through the Krell formation with terrifying efficiency. The human fighters worked in coordinated groups, targeting the weak points in Krell bioarmor that it had taken the Council years to identify. Somehow the humans already knew exactly where to hit. Then the capital ships opened fire. Thexal had expected energy weapons like the Council used. Plasma cannons or particle beams. Instead, the humans used projectiles, but these were not ordinary projectiles. The sensors showed chunks of metal accelerating to a significant fraction of light speed before impacting the Krell ships. The effect was devastating. One shot punched completely through a hive ship, the kinetic energy alone causing the entire vessel to break apart from the inside. Railguns, Yanara breathed. They're using magnetic acceleration. That's ancient technology, but the power required to accelerate projectiles to that speed. A human destroyer fired something else. The Council sensors identified it as a nuclear weapon moments before it detonated inside a cluster of Krell fighters. The explosion was massive but controlled. The radiation focused into a deadly beam by the weapon's design. They're using nuclear weapons as conventional ordnance, Thexal said in disbelief. In close combat, with their own ships nearby. Their ships must be heavily shielded against radiation, Yanara observed, and their crews must have treatments against exposure. This is warfare doctrine designed around accepting casualties we would never accept. The human flagship, the Indomitable, moved into the center of the battle. It was heading directly toward the largest Krell hive ship, the one that served as the swarm's command center. The hive ship was 10 times the size of the human vessel. Its biocannons fired continuously, streams of acid and poisonous spores filling space around it. The Indomitable did not dodge. It went straight through the barrage, its armor blackening and peeling away but holding. They're going to ram it, Breck said. By all the ancient gods, they're actually going to ram it. The Indomitable struck the Krell hive ship at full speed. The impact sent shockwaves visible on sensors. Both ships should have been destroyed. Instead, the Indomitable's armored prow punched deep into the organic hull of the hive ship. And then its weapons fired point-blank into the wound. Explosions rippled through the Krell vessel from the inside. The hive ship began to break apart, but the human ship was still lodged inside it. Thexal watched in horror as debris and biological matter rained down on the human flagship. Surely it was doomed. Then impossibly, the Indomitable began to move. Its engines fired at full power, pulling itself free from the dying hive ship. The human vessel emerged from the wreckage, its front third completely destroyed, its armor breached in a dozen places. But it was still firing. Still fighting. Get me Admiral Chen, Thexal ordered. The view screen showed the human bridge. It was chaos. Smoke filled the air. Crew members were bleeding from cuts and injuries. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. And in the center of it all, Admiral Chen stood calmly giving orders. Admiral, you need to withdraw, Thexal said. Your ship is crippled. Chen looked at him and smiled. There was blood on her face from a cut above her eye, but her expression was one of fierce joy. Crippled? This is just getting started. We can still fire, which means we can still fight. But your crew, my crew knew what they signed up for, Chen interrupted. We're humans, Admiral. We don't retreat just because we're bleeding. A Krell fighter squadron broke through the human fighter screen and headed toward the damaged Indomitable. Before Thexel could say anything, several human ships moved to intercept. They positioned themselves between the Krell and their flagship, taking hits meant for the larger vessel. One destroyer took a direct hit to its reactor and exploded. Khan, this is Fighter Group 7, a voice came over the communication channel. We've got you covered, Indomitable. Nobody touches our flagship. -7, Chen responded. Protect the Council carrier. They have wounded aboard and no shields, but Admiral, that's an order, pilot. Protect the Council ships. Thexel looked at his sensors in disbelief. A Council carrier was indeed in trouble, its shields down and engines damaged. It was a sitting target, and the human fighters were moving to protect it, even though it meant leaving their own flagship more exposed. Why? Thexel asked. Why protect us? You owe us nothing. Chen met his eyes through the view screen. Because that's what the right thing to do is, Admiral. We didn't come here to settle old debts. We came here to save lives, even the lives of people who imprisoned us. A massive explosion rocked the battlefield. One of the largest Krell hive ships had been destroyed by concentrated human fire. The Krell formation was breaking apart. The swarm was losing cohesion. Commander Breck was studying the tactical display with professional interest. Their combat doctrine is brilliant, he said quietly. Aggressive to the point of madness, but with purpose. They're not trying to destroy the Krell efficiently. They're trying to terrify them. Every action is designed for maximum psychological impact. Can insects feel terror? Yenara asked. The hive mind can, Breck replied. And look, the Krell are retreating again, not because they're losing, but because they're afraid. It was true. The Krell were breaking off combat and fleeing. Their numbers were still strong. They could have continued the fight, but they were running from something they had never encountered before. An enemy that fought with controlled insanity. An enemy that did not care about damage to itself as long as it hurt its opponent more. An enemy that seemed to enjoy battle. All ships cease fire, Admiral Chen ordered. Let them run. We've made our point. The human fleet stopped shooting immediately. Their discipline as impressive as their ferocity. The Krell continued to flee until they vanished into hyperspace. The battle was over. Thexel looked at the damage reports. The human fleet had lost 23 ships destroyed, and almost every other vessel was damaged to some degree. The Indomitable itself was barely holding together. But they had won. Against a Krell force that should have overwhelmed them, the humans had won. Admiral Chen, Thexel said slowly, what exactly did you do during those 60 years? Chen's expression became serious. We remembered something, Admiral Thexel. You tried to lock us away because you thought we were dangerous. And you were right. We are dangerous. But we chose to be dangerous to your enemies instead of to you. We could have spent 60 years plotting revenge. Instead, we spent it preparing to save you. Thexel felt something he had not felt in a long time. Shame. Deep, profound shame. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. You owe us more than that, Chen replied. But the apology is a start. Now shall we discuss your council's terms? I believe you were going to recommend them accept our proposal. Thexel looked at his officers, at the human ships on his sensors, at the empty space where the Krell had been moments before. And he made his decision. I will do more than recommend, he said. I will demand it. The shuttle carrying Admiral Thexel and his delegation approached the Indomitable slowly. The human flagship was surrounded by repair vessels, robotic and crude, working frantically to patch the massive damage from the ramming attack. Thexel could see straight through the ship in places where the armor had been completely torn away. It was remarkable the vessel had survived at all. They build their ships tough, Commander Breck observed. Most council vessels would have broken in half from that impact. They build everything tough, Yenara added quietly. I've been analyzing their transmissions, the cultural data embedded in their communications protocols. These humans have a saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think they took that very literally. The shuttle docked in one of the Indomitable's intact hangar bays. Thexel had expected a military reception, armed guards, formal protocols, perhaps even a subtle show of force to remind him Who held the power now? Instead, they were met by a single human officer who smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Admiral Thexall, welcome aboard," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Commander Sarah Okonkwo, Admiral Chen's first officer. If you'll follow me, the Admiral is waiting in the observation lounge." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Thexall tried to reconcile what he saw with his expectations. The walls were not bare metal or sterile white like most military vessels. There were paintings hanging in the corridors. Real paintings, not digital displays. Landscapes from alien worlds. Abstract art in colors that seemed to shift as he looked at them. There were plants growing in small alcoves. Living green things that served no tactical purpose. "You decorate your warships?" Yenara asked, surprised. Commander Okonkwo laughed. "Of course. We spend months or years aboard these vessels. They're not just machines, they're our homes. Humans need beauty even in war. Especially in war." They passed a section where crew members were repairing damage. The humans worked with efficient speed, but Thexall noticed they were also talking and laughing. One of them was singing some kind of work song. Others joined in. "Your crew seems very casual," Breck said carefully. "Discipline doesn't require misery, Commander," Okonkwo replied. "Our people fight better when they remember what they're fighting for. Joy, beauty, each other. We don't strip that away just because we're in uniform." The observation lounge was stunning. One entire wall was transparent, showing the stars beyond. There were comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, and in the center was a low table with what appeared to be tea service. Admiral Chen stood by the window looking out at the fleet. She turned as they entered. "Please sit," Chen said, gesturing to the chairs. "Would you like tea?" "It's actual tea from Earth, not a synthetic substitute. One of the few luxuries we've been able to produce in our isolation." Thexall sat carefully in one of the chairs. It was sized for humans and slightly too small for his larger frame, but comfortable enough. Chen poured tea into small cups and handed them around. The liquid was dark and smelled of strange plants. "Now then," Chen said as she sat down, "let's discuss the elephant in the room." "The what?" Yenara asked. A human expression. "It means the obvious thing everyone is thinking about but no one wants to mention. In this case, the fact that we manipulated this entire situation from start to finish." Thexall nearly dropped his tea. He had suspected, of course, but to hear Chen admit it so casually was shocking. "You knew the Krell were coming today," he said slowly. "You knew they would attack after your arrival." "We've been tracking Krell movements for 8 months, Chen confirmed. "Our long-range sensors are far more advanced than yours. We knew they were planning a second wave. We knew approximately when it would arrive, and we positioned ourselves to arrive just before them, at the moment when you were most vulnerable and most desperate." "You manipulated us," Breck growled. "Yes," Chen said simply. "We needed you to be in a position where you would accept our help, where you would have no choice but to agree to our terms. If we had approached you a year ago, you would have refused out of pride. You would have tried to fight us or contain us again. But now, after seeing what we can do, after seeing us save your ships even when we didn't have to, you're more likely to listen." "That's cold," Yenara said, calculating. "It's strategic," Chen corrected. "We learned it from watching you. The Andromeda Council is very good at political maneuvering, at using the right pressure at the right time to get what you want. We simply applied those same principles." Thexall set down his teacup carefully. "You said you've been watching us for 60 years. What else have you learned?" Chen stood and walked to the window. "We learned that the Council is not evil, just proud. You genuinely believed you were protecting us when you established the quarantine. You thought we were children who needed guidance. You were wrong, but your intentions were not malicious." "That doesn't excuse what we did," Thexall said. "No, it doesn't," Chen agreed. "But it helps us understand why you did it. And understanding is the first step toward forgiveness." "You speak as if you've already forgiven us," Yenara observed. "Not entirely," Chen replied. "But we're willing to try. Holding on to anger for 60 years would have poisoned us, would have turned us into something we don't want to be. So we chose a different path. We chose to prepare, to become strong enough that you could never imprison us again, but also to remain open to the possibility of cooperation." Breck leaned forward in his chair. "I don't understand you humans. You fight like demons but talk like philosophers. You ram your ships into enemies but put art on your walls. You manipulate us and then serve us tea. What are you?" Chen smiled. "We're contradictions, Commander. We're capable of terrible violence and profound compassion. often in the same breath. We can hate and forgive. We can destroy and create. We contain multitudes, as one of our poets once said. That's what makes us human. It's terrifying, Yanara said quietly. Yes, Chen agreed. It is. But it's also what makes us valuable allies. We adapt, we survive, we overcome. For 60 years you tried to contain us, and instead you gave us the gift of time. Time to develop technologies you've never seen. Time to study you without interference. Time to decide what kind of species we wanted to be when we finally broke free. And what did you decide? Thexal asked. To be better than our worst impulses, Chen said. To be the kind of species that helps its former captors when they're in danger. To be the kind of species that offers peace even when we could choose war. She turned back to face them, her expression serious. But make no mistake, Admiral, we are offering peace from a position of strength, not weakness. If the Council refuses our terms, we will not beg. We will return to human space and let you face the Krell alone. And if you ever try to quarantine us again, we will respond with force. Those days are over. The observation lounge was silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Thexal looked at his officers. Breck's expression was thoughtful. Yanara's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. They were all thinking the same thing. The humans held all the cards. I will take your terms to the Council, Thexal said finally, and I will tell them exactly what I saw here today. A species that fought alongside us even though we imprisoned them. A species that protects others at cost to themselves. A species that deserves to be treated as equals. That's all we ask, Chen said. Equality. Not dominance. Not revenge. Just a seat at the table. An alarm sounded. Commander Okonkwo checked a display on her wrist. Admiral, we're detecting massive Krell signatures. Multiple hive ships. Hundreds of them. This is bigger than anything we've seen before. Chen moved to a console on the wall and brought up a tactical display. Thexal saw his worst nightmare confirmed. The Krell were not retreating. They were gathering their full strength. Every hive ship in their territory was converging on this location. This wasn't a battle, Chen said softly. This was reconnaissance. The Krell were testing us, and now they're coming back with everything they have. How long do we have? Thexal asked. 6 hours. Maybe less, Thexal stood. Then I need to contact the Council immediately. We need every ship they can send. Agreed, Chen said. But Admiral, there's something else. This decision about our terms? It needs to happen now. Not after the battle, now. Because I need to know if we're fighting as allies or as separate forces. It will make a difference in our strategy. Thexal understood. The humans needed to know if they could trust the Council to have their backs, just as the Council needed to trust the humans. And there was no more time for political maneuvering. I will contact the Council, he said, and I will tell them they have one choice. Accept your terms or face extinction. The Council meeting took place across quantum-encrypted channels, with representatives from all 7 member species appearing as holograms in the Indomitable's communications center. Admiral Thexal stood before them, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of the galaxy. This is unprecedented, declared High Chancellor Morvax, the ancient Cecil who had led the Council for 2 centuries. You ask us to capitulate to demands from a species we deemed unworthy of membership. I ask you to save your pride for after we survive, Thexal replied. The Krell are coming with their full force. Every hive ship. Every warrior. If we do not unite with the humans now, we will not live to regret it. The humans manipulated us, another counselor argued. They admitted to orchestrating this entire situation. How can we trust them? Because they saved our ships when they didn't have to, Thexal said. Because they took damage to protect our wounded. Because they are willing to die fighting our war even though we imprisoned them for 60 years. If that does not earn trust, then what does? The debate raged for precious minutes. Some counselors argued for accepting the human terms. Others wanted to find a compromise, a way to accept help without granting full membership. A few even suggested trying to seize human technology by force, though these voices were quickly silenced by Thexal's description of human combat capabilities. Finally, High Chancellor Morvax raised one crystalline appendage for silence. Admiral Thexal, you have fought beside these humans. You have seen them in battle. Answer me truthfully. Are they worthy of joining the Andromeda Council? Thexal thought about everything he had seen. The human ships covered in art. The crew singing while they worked. Admiral Chen serving tea while discussing strategy. The pilots laughing as they flew into danger. The willingness to ram an enemy ship and survive. the choice to protect former enemies. They are worthy, he said quietly, not because of their weapons or their technology, though both are impressive. They are worthy because they understand something we forgot. That strength without compassion is just cruelty. That victory without honor is just survival. They could have let us die and been safe. Instead, they chose to fight. That makes them more than worthy. It makes them necessary. The council chambers fell silent. Then Morvac spoke again. Very well. The council accepts the human terms. The quarantine is ended. Humanity will be granted full membership with all rights and privileges, and I will personally draft a public apology for our actions 60 years ago. Transmit that decision to Admiral Chen immediately, Thexal said, and pray we made it in time. The Krell arrived like a plague. The sensors showed over 2,000 hive ships, with countless smaller vessels swarming around them. It was the largest concentration of Krell forces ever recorded. The swarm had gambled everything on this single battle. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now hastily repaired enough to fight. Around her, holographic displays showed both the human and council fleets. She touched a control and her voice broadcast to every ship. All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Chen. By order of the Andromeda Council, I am assuming tactical command of the combined fleet. I want to be clear about something. I don't care what species you are. I don't care what flag you fly. Today we are one fleet, one people, one purpose. We are going to show the Krell what unity looks like. She turned to her tactical officer. Integrate all council systems with our battle network. I want every ship connected, shared targeting data, shared shield harmonics, complete coordination. Within minutes, something remarkable happened. Human artificial intelligence merged with Cecil energy management systems. Fordani shield generators were synchronized with human point defense networks. Turian weapons platforms received targeting data from human sensor arrays. 7 species and 1 newcomer became a single fighting force. The Krell attacked in their usual swarm formation, trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. But this time the combined fleet was ready. Chen's strategy was not to fight the swarm head-on. Instead, she used the fleet's combined strengths in ways neither humans nor council could have achieved alone. The Cecil energy cruisers, powered by human fusion technology, created massive energy barriers that channeled the Krell into kill zones. The Turian battleships, protected by overlapping shields from multiple species, became immovable fortresses that the Krell broke against like waves on rocks. The human fighters, guided by Council long-range sensors, struck at Krell weak points before the enemy even knew they were there. But Chen had another strategy, one that shocked everyone. She ordered her science teams to deploy something they had been developing in secret during the 60 years of isolation. Computer viruses specifically designed to infiltrate biological neural networks, viruses that could speak to the Krell hive mind. Captain Yanara, Chen called out, we need your help. Our computers can inject these viruses into the hive mind, but we need someone to guide the message, someone who can communicate across unusual channels. Yanara, who had volunteered to serve on the human flagship, understood immediately. As a Cecil energy being, she could interface directly with both computer systems and biological minds. She could be the bridge. What message do you want to send? She asked. Not a message. An offer, Chen replied. We're not trying to kill the hive mind. We're trying to wake it up. Deep within the Krell swarm in the largest hive ship, the ancient Krell queen felt something impossible. A voice in the collective consciousness. Not a Krell voice. Something else. Something that spoke in concepts rather than words. The message was simple. You were not always like this. You were individuals once. You chose the hive mind to survive a threat that no longer exists. You have forgotten who you were. Remember, the Queen's mind, ancient and vast, suddenly saw memories that had been buried for 1,000 years. Memories of Krell who had names, who had families, who had art and music and individual dreams. The hive mind had been meant as a temporary measure, a way to coordinate defense against an enemy that had destroyed their homeworld millennia ago. But the enemy was long dead, and the Krell had forgotten how to be individuals. The message continued. You consume because you are afraid. Afraid of being weak. Afraid of being alone. But you are not alone. Join us not as food, as equals. The Queen hesitated. The hive mind was safe, predictable. Individual consciousness was terrifying. It meant making choices. It meant being responsible for oneself. It meant possibly being wrong, but it also meant being alive, truly alive. The Queen made a decision that echoed through every Krell mind in the swarm. She began to release her control. Not all at once. Not completely. But enough. Enough for individual Krell to start making their own choices. On the human flagship, sensors detected the change immediately. The Krell formation began to break apart. Not into chaos, but into smaller groups. Some ships continued to attack. Others stopped fighting and hung motionless in space. A few even began to retreat, their crews choosing self-preservation over hive commands. It's working, Yanara breathed. The hive mind is fracturing. They're becoming individuals again. Chen did not celebrate. All ships cease fire on any Krell vessel that stops attacking. Offer them safe passage out of the battle. But keep weapons hot. Some of them will keep fighting, she was right. About half the Krell fleet continued the assault, driven by sub-queens who refused to relinquish control. But the other half withdrew or simply drifted, their crews experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in generations. The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The combined fleet, fighting with perfect coordination, pushed back the still hostile Krell ships. When the last hive ship finally retreated into hyperspace, a strange silence fell across the battlefield. Thousands of Krell vessels remained, no longer fighting but not fleeing either. They were simply waiting, their newly individual minds trying to understand what had happened to them. Admiral Thexel, watching from his own bridge, contacted Chen. "What do we do with them?" "We help them," Chen replied. "We teach them how to be themselves again. We give them a chance to join the galactic community as individuals rather than as a swarm. Isn't that what the Council should have done with humanity 60 years ago?" Thexel understood the lesson. The Council had tried to contain humanity out of fear. It had almost destroyed them all. Now they had a chance to do better with the Krell. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is." 1 year later, the Andromeda Council chambers looked very different. The semicircle of seats now included representatives from 8 species instead of 7. Admiral Chen, now Ambassador Chen, sat among them in the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Next to the council seats was a smaller section, still being constructed, where individual Krell representatives would eventually sit once their transition was complete. High Chancellor Morvax called the session to order. "Today we discuss the next phase of galactic expansion. Ambassador Chen has proposed a joint expedition beyond our galaxy, to explore what lies in the vast dark between the stars." Chen stood. "We have learned something important this past year. We are stronger together than apart. Humanity learned it during 60 years of forced isolation. The Council learned it fighting the Krell. The Krell learned it by becoming individuals again. Now it's time to take that lesson further. You propose we explore the unknown together," Morvax said. "It is ambitious. Some might say reckless." Some said the same thing about letting humans join the Council, Chen replied with a slight smile. "But here we are, and the galaxy is better for it." Thexal, now serving as military liaison between Earth and the Council, spoke up. "Ambassador Chen is correct. We have seen what we can accomplish when we work together. Why stop at one galaxy? Why not see what wonders await us in the darkness?" The vote was unanimous. The great expedition would begin within the year, ships from all member species working together, pushing into the unknown. After the session ended, Thexal found Chen in one of the Council's many gardens. She was examining a flower, a species native to his homeworld of Vorda. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thexal said. "Yes," Chen agreed. "You know, Ambassador, there's something I never told you about those 60 years of quarantine." "What's that?" "We were angry at first, hurt, betrayed. We wanted revenge. But our leaders made a choice. They decided that if we ever got free, we wanted to be the kind of species that other species would want as friends. So we worked on ourselves. Our technology, yes, but also our philosophy, our art, our understanding of what it means to be alive in a universe full of other life." "You turned a prison into a chrysalis," Thexal said. "Exactly," Chen smiled. "And when we emerged, we were ready not just to fight, but to build. To grow, to explore. You tried to lock us away, Admiral. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift possible. Time to become worthy of the stars." Thexal felt that familiar shame again, but also something else. Pride. Not in what his people had done, but in what they had all become together. "Thank you," he said quietly. For forgiving us. For saving us. For teaching us. Chen laughed. We're not done teaching each other, Admiral. We're just getting started. The universe is vast and we have so much to learn, but at least now, we'll learn it together. They stood in the garden, an old enemy and a new friend, looking up at the stars and thinking about the adventures that awaited them. The quarantine was over. The war was over. And the future, vast and unknown, belonged to all of them together.